yeah, you could have killed me right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And having to have that face-to-face interaction, that's a lot of what's missing in our social media landscape again.
He walked out of it with a $6,300 fine. And it isn't a situation where they came in and said, hey, we noticed you guys are doing a great job overall. Here's some things that you need to work on. We're going to come back in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And if they're not fixed, you're going to get a fine.
Yeah.
You can get that type of stress relief, and I'm sure you've done it. I get it when when you really work yourself hard.
Right.
Where you just kind of zone everything else out. Maybe you're splitting wood. Maybe you're building a cabin in the woods. I know that you had actually done that. I saw it on your property. It was phenomenal.
Hey guys, welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. I have two of my great buddies with me today, Mike and Steve Kraus, owners of Allegheny Woodworks, really one of the top solid wood door manufacturers in the country. Two great guys. We have a lot of awesome conversations around the bonfire from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
Having a couple beers, so I'm excited to kind of get it on record here and see where it goes.
I don't know how I feel about that. I got to tell you, your intro. Phenomenal.
Thanks.
I'm blushy. I have the vapors. Oh, this is good stuff.
Well, I mean, you guys are just like the prototypical American dudes running a business, doing the grind, making it work. I mean, I just think you guys are really awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, what you're doing is pretty awesome too. I like this. This is, I don't know, nerve-wracking. Podcast thing going. I like it.
Yeah, I go with nerve-wracking. I mean, it's not my first podcast, but this one's a little more business centric, so I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate you having us.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, it should be cathartic. Let your feelings out, guys. Let's just let it loose.
I don't know if there's a swear counter on here, but get it going.
So why don't you just start off just giving us like a little bit of an overview of your business and what you do, what you're really good at, and kind of who you're trying to work with more of.
All right. Well, Steve and I own and run Allegheny Woodworks. We make solid wood doors and molding and trim and stuff like that. Ship it all over the country.
Yep.
Real, true solid wood. No veneers, no fiberboard, no MDF.
Not solid core.
Yeah, not solid core, like real solid wood. And to my knowledge, we have very few actual competitors that do what we do because it is, I don't know, there's some pitfalls in it. It's a natural product, so, it can look good, and then you sand it a little bit more, and it looks good, and you sand it a little bit more, and it looks like crap. It's just kind of, something that happens during the solid wood process.
Yeah.
But Steve and I got into it. I was part of the existing business since 2006. Okay. And then, I really like manufacturing and all of that. And when it come time for, a chance to purchase the business, the only person that I would ever trust with any venture like this is my older brother. And, since then we've been kicking ass and taking names and making doors and all of that. So we try to keep, the shop as lean as possible. And we have some real craftsmen that have worked there since the first day of the business that have put through some really fine custom products because that's kind of our niche is when someone needs some weird custom height, custom width, exterior door or something like that. That's kind of where we fall. Yeah. I mean, we've, as much as it's a little bit more lucrative for us if we got to make, 8,000 of the same door. There's obviously some huge efficiencies in trying to make something like that. But where we've kind of fallen is our niche is custom woodworking, all that. And when someone needs a door that's, 72 inches tall or something like that, they're like, where do I get something like that? Because you can't buy them. Locally or anything like that. So they get online and they find us, and by the time they see our price on that one weird door, they go, oh my gosh, I could do my whole house, and it ends up really well for us.
Yep. How long have you guys owned the business now?
What is it, just over 10 years now, right?
Yeah, on January 14th, we passed 10 years.
Wow.
The business incorporated in 1997. So the business has been there, that makes it, 27 years. And we were fortunate enough to get into it. It's been very, very fun time. Most of the time, we have a good time when we're working. You know, like he said, we have a lot of long tenured guys who have put a lot of time into the business. So it's very nice having a veteran crew like that.
Right.
Really, for some of the cool stuff that we do. I mean, when we're talking about custom woodworking, I mean, everything we make is custom built.
Yep.
But when we get into the super custom stuff where we're doing, historical renovations, putting doors into houses that are as old as my grandparents.
Or older.
That's where we really get into it. The one that's been hitting us lately is churches, archtop doors that go into, the old stonework in churches and stuff.
Yep.
Right.
And we really fall into that niche a lot. And back to Mike's point, we really don't have a ton of competition in the field, especially when it comes to that high custom stuff. I mean, there's some competitors out there.
Yep.
Not a lot of them, and we go head-to-head with them just like any other business, and we make it work.
Yeah.
Scratch and claw for everything you get, and when the months are big, it's easy, and when the months aren't as big, it's a little harder, but we get through either way. We've got a great staff, and we enjoy going to work most every single day. I mean, today was a little more challenging. It was a Monday today, but...
Yeah, it was a challenging weekend, so it's...
So what's the challenge? What's going on now?
Well, just... it's getting towards the end of the season here, and business is picking up, but this is when people are taking vacations, and unfortunately, I had a loss in the family last week, and so I was out of town traveling, and very little sleep, and it's weird to think that for that split second this morning, I went, oh, good, I get to go to work today.
Right, it's almost like
it's
a little
it's like a little
yeah.
rest to come into just something that I know and control and just be able to go talk to our guys. I mean, because I always tell them at every meeting, I'm like, hey guys, we see each other more than we see our families. So you go, hey, how's your kid doing, whatever, and a lot of times it's much more graphic than that, because that's the type of shop. It's mostly males, but we depend on we have several females that work for us, because when it comes to detail oriented work, they are spectacular. That is the niche that they have fallen into. So we have most of our office staff is females, very detail oriented for the paperwork aspect of things, that we depend on them so much. They're just amazing. And the ones that work in the shop are absolute machines. They're phenomenal. We couldn't get by without them.
Yeah, I think what I heard you say is that men and women have inherent differences.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and all you have to do is just take 1 second to embrace the differences. And, you need something heavy moved, you look at this guy.
Right.
You need some detail-oriented stuff, you go to the lady at prehang. You know what I mean? And it's, you just have to embrace that stuff. And but in all seriousness, I mean, all of our shop kind of works hand in hand, and it just moves from, we're kind of a pull type of manufacturing shop where it starts where someone's looking for doors to sand, so they go back to door assembly and say, hey, I need some more doors. They're always in the middle of building doors, and it's just pulling from the previous station all the way back to the ripsaw, where we which has been one of the more challenging areas, is getting lumber in a timely fashion and stuff like that, where pre-COVID, which again I feel like that's the new, where it switched from BC to AD.
Right, exactly.
It's pre-COVID, post-COVID. The whole landscape of everything is different now.
Yep.
And but pre-COVID, getting any amount of lumber in was a week and a half at most.
Right.
If it was over a week and a half, I'm on the phone with the vendor going, hey man, do your truck break down or what?
Yeah.
Now to get it in between 2 and 4 weeks is just expected. You know what I mean? We're talking local lumber. You can't throw a baseball out here without hitting a maple or an oak tree.
Right.
And
it's shocking.
Somehow to get, we use a firmly dried product that's dried down to 6 to 8% moisture, which does take time. And it's crazy to think that we're just now coming out where the amount of logs that are being cut, because it's I'm almost positive it's like a 2-month drying process.
Okay.
To between cutting and drying, and with the rotation of board footage and stuff, that little break for COVID where nothing was getting cut, nothing was getting dried. I mean, it put some of those manufacturers, behind so far, where they're just now starting to get stuff cut in a reliable manner, surfaced and dried and all of that stuff. It's a colossal operation when you see one of those lumber mills. It's how big is the one down in
oh my goodness, I couldn't even venture a guess. I mean, I throw a number like 5 million square feet.
Yeah, it's like going to Union Station here. It's a whole city block under roof. Wow. And it's just packs and packs and packs of lumber, like more lumber than you could imagine. And it's just in various processes of being dried, and it just takes time. It's just one of those things that's, nature said it takes this amount of time to do, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Right.
So
how are you dealing with the delays in raw materials being delivered to your operation, so you can kind of take that next step?
Well, I mean, obviously we don't keep the overhead that we used to, but I think that's pretty common amongst any business, especially post-COVID. I think most businesses had a little bit more capital on hand to stock a little bit more raw materials to kind of keep that lead time down a little bit.
Right.
But we don't carry a lot of overhead. We've unfortunately, due to restrictions on being able to get any employee who wants to work, our core people, we've decided to just invest more in them. So our shop is hungry. Like, as soon as there's something ripped out, everyone's like looking at what it is, trying to get ahead of it, making the side styles, making the parts, making the panels, all of that. And everyone's hungry. And it's, like I said, it's a pull. It's always a pull. The guy building doors is going, hey, I need more stuff to build doors. And this guy's like, okay, well, I need this to run the door. So he goes back one more station. And we have comprehensive paperwork for sizing and all of that for every single component of the doors. Lord knows it's a chase constantly for especially the custom nature of the product we make. Tiny changes in everything require everything to be 100% custom. But we have it fairly streamlined. I mean, it's chasing the dragon a little bit, trying to, you always want to try and evolve to that perfection where it's impossible to make anything wrong or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a natural product. I mean, it's real wood.
Right.
If it's really humid out, I can cut apart to width and then put it on a cart, and when he goes to run it 2 days later, it's a hair bigger or a hair smaller. You know what I mean? Yeah. It shrinks and expands with the climate until it's sealed. And it's just the nature of a real product.
Right.
It's our competitors in the veneered market would say, oh, well, there's all that variation, those panels shrink and expand. And, well, yeah, that's what doors have done since there were doors.
Right.
Forever. And nobody walks into a mansion and says, oh, look at my beautiful veneers. They look for real solid woodworking, and that's what we deal in, is real wood. What are we up to now? How many species? 30?
Well, since you decided to pull out the axe and get rid of birch.
Oh, good.
We're at 29 species,
29
counting the rustic species. And some of them are getting easier to get. It's not an availability issue, going back to what you were asking about as far as, lead time, what's the challenges of getting it. It's not an availability issue for most things. It's a shipping issue because it's harder and harder to find people to do the trucking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as our lead time goes, we just kind of roll in whatever we need to roll in into our lead time to our end consumer. And if there's a lumber delay, we just
eat it.
Kind of eat it.
Yeah.
And we say, oh, well, Andy, Bob, and Chris, can you guys stay for a couple hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, to make sure the job for Nate gets put through, because we're on a time frame on that one. We need to,
because we know Nate Wheeler's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't put up with delays.
I mean, look at his chiseled beard. I mean, just like you're chiseled out of granite, buddy.
But I mean, as far as availability, everything's available. It's just getting it from point A to point B, or when we're talking about a tropical or a West Coast species, it's point A to point B and then to point C, which is us.
Yeah.
Where there might be shipping involved, not just over the roads but over the ocean.
Right.
In the case of some of the mahoganies and the tropicals.
What's the most popular species right now? What are people, if you have a multi-million-dollar house and you want to put in something really nice and modern, what are you going to do?
I know the expectation is you want me to say mahogany or Spanish cedar or something high end.
Yeah.
But oak.
Yeah.
Everyone loves oak.
Mm-hmm.
White oak especially. If you walk into any Lowe's and you see the kind of bleached white oak flooring or they have, veneered desks that look like it. They have, flooring and tile and all that.
Yep.
That real, like, kind of driftwood white oak is so unbelievably popular right now. It's insane. And it's to a point where it's almost the same price to just have me make those same doors out of mahogany. Because strangely, and again, this is an unpopular opinion, in other countries where they just do work, the tropical species, there was no change in lead time, no change in price. Everything just kept going.
Yeah.
And it was more the domestic stuff because, I don't think anyone who would ever watch this podcast would deny that COVID turned our entire, economy and life and, just day-to-day lives upside down for quite some time. And we're hopefully righting the ship to the, I hate to use the term, but the new normal, which I hate that term.
I hated that term so much when they started saying it because I was like, I'm not willing to accept this is the new normal. I'm just not going to do it. Yeah.
We need to at least try to get past, that mass hysteria and stuff like that. It's here and it's here forever. And, we'll get through it and we got to go on with our day-to-day lives, but, food on the table and hopefully a beer in your hand once in a while and keep it moving.
And hopefully healthier food, get a little vitamin D, take some vitamin C, take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That might go a long way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Stop eating nothing but chips and all of that.
I don't know why
stuff,
I'm getting so sick.
Yeah, exactly. I know people are looking at me on the camera going, "Oh yeah, way to go, hypocrite." Because I don't know, on the camera my face looks like a, an egg with a face painted
You're toning up some.
I'm working on it. Yeah. I'm working on it, but but it's one of those things. We all can't be like Steve over there and get all
you need
swole.
to get out there and do some jujitsu with Steve.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Does he go?
No. I did for a time. I haven't been training for, God, it's got to be 4 years straight now with no training.
It's been a minute for you.
It's been a while.
You'll get back there someday, maybe.
Well, it's one of those things about jiu-jitsu. The guys are always so welcoming. They're like, come on, man, you got to get back here. Get over here, know? And it's just, once you're part of that community, it's really nice. It's a group of really good people.
Yeah.
And you would imagine, like, you think, oh, it's MMA, it's, just a bunch of alphas, blah, blah. No, it's... Yes, there's a bunch of ball busting involved, but it's just guys ribbing guys, and the people who go, especially at Matalea where he trains. It's just it's a bunch of murderers who are just the nicest people.
Yeah,
they know what's about to happen, and it's in a controlled environment. They get almost no injuries at all because the motto is, hey man, if you're going to hit something, you're not doing this to hurt people, and those people get weeded out really, really quickly. So there's been, I think I'm one of the worst injuries that ever happened there, and it just I don't know who did it.
Your big brother picking on you.
What fucking asshole would hurt their poor younger brother? I can't even imagine.
I guess I just expected your body to be more resilient.
I know, yeah.
Not so soft.
Expected to be made out of granite, like we're doing WWE.
If you weren't so soft, it wouldn't happen. But I guess it was.
That's how I look
fault.
at it too. I agree with you on that.
So Steve is a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Correct,
have you attained any belts yet?
No, I'm a blue. Yeah.
Oh, you're blue.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm a blue belt,
all right.
Yeah, and I'm the stereotype. Anyone who's watching this who does jiu-jitsu goes, oh, blue belt, he's gone. Because that's what happened. Like I got my blue belt and then I got injured, and then, I don't know. To be honest, it just took me to a really bad place mentally, and you're just afraid of getting hurt. And I went a couple times. Like he was like, oh, there's a seminar, you got to come, and I would come. And you know what happened at the seminar? I got hurt again.
Oh, jeez.
And it's like, oh, come on, seriously? Jeez.
But at least it was different injuries each time you
Correct.
showed up, not the one that I inflicted on you, 27 years ago.
No, please. Yeah.
Mike would argue that it was a chain of events, though.
Yeah.
He would.
It
definitely
the
all
shoulder somehow led to my knee.
It all ties back to me,
Right.
at some point.
Well, no, and
in
that's
the timeline.
And in the essence of being honest, because I think personal responsibility is a huge thing.
Yeah.
I could have been back a million times. It just, there always feels like there's more to do, and Steve is absolutely religious with it. He's, doesn't miss days unless it's a real big problem, and you're really involved with. They do a comprehensive kids classes down there, and stuff like that. And the kids are monsters. Mm-hmm. I wish that stuff was available back when we were younger. I mean, I got into wrestling around 7th grade. And my gosh, it did wonders for my self-esteem and all that. Because I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, I've always been kind of I've worn the husky size most of my life, and going for doing something like that improves your self-esteem and all that is phenomenal, especially for those kids, because it's you watch these kids roll and it's like, oh my gosh, I think that kid would hurt me bad. Like,
yeah,
it's and I mean, I watch my niece Lexi, his daughter. And she is the quietest, sweetest little girl ever. She barely has anything to say. And you control her and go, oh, you're the worst, Lexi. And she says, no, don't say that. And then you see her just
turn into an animal
snatch
out there.
some boy's life out of him. Take him over and throw a rear naked choke on him. And, it's a phenomenal moment.
Yeah. So Steve, how would the world be different if all men got out and did jiu-jitsu?
Well, people ask why I always train jiu-jitsu, and I'll relate it back to our podcast that we're talking about here. Whether you own a manufacturing business or you own a restaurant or you own a retailer or whatever you do, if you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, however, you need to have some sort of outlet where you can go, if it's for a half an hour or an hour or 2 hours, where when you're in that environment, the rest of the stuff kind of fades away. When I get on the mats, worrying about how I'm going to pay the taxes, or worrying about whether that whiteout came in, or worrying about this or that, or X or Y or Z, kind of fades away, if even for a little bit. And whether that means I'm taking a beating or dishing out a beating or just trying to recover, you always keep your mind in the center of that. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the middle, it kind of gives you some sort of stress relief from everything else,
right?
Even if it's just for a minute. And it's so mentally helpful. And back to what you asked, if everybody did something like that, I honestly think people would be more patient, more understanding, more forgiving.
Yeah. And a big component of it is the face-to-face interaction with people.
Right.
And this is kind of a combat sport, so it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around. When you tap, sometimes that tap means, you could have killed me right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And having to have that face-to-face interaction, that's a lot of what's missing in our social media landscape. Again, for whatever my opinion is worth, in our social media landscape we have now, the idea that you may have to speak to that person face-to-face and have any type of additional repercussions past, words,
right?
Is something that's really missing. Before social media, if you were going to say something to someone, you had to go to them and say it.
Yep.
Or even say it on the phone. I mean, most people won't even treat someone like they treat them online, like even on a phone call. Right. When you're speaking to someone.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a total. Yeah, it's an
I mean, it's
escalation,
a total different way, and I think that over time here, we're getting control of that. When I was. God, I'm trying to think, when was the whole cyberbullying thing a big, giant issue where people just went off on people over social media? And it still happens to a point, but it's been, it's been more, people have been policing it for so long, where cyberbullying is a real thing.
Yep.
I mean, anyone who's watched an 80s movie knows that, in high school is difficult. It's a hard place to be. Everyone's trying to find out who they are, and there's always the jocks or the nerds, whatever it is.
Yep.
And some people get treated poorly. I fell into that category. I don't know if you could tell, but
I did.
And and you get past it because you don't really have a choice. I mean, you get past it, and it makes you who you are later on in life. And I would like to think that I try to treat everyone with dignity and respect, and all of that, right? And and that's because when I went through it and I was not treated like that, I said, hey, I don't think I'm ever going to be like that.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting how some people take experiences like that and turn into the person that says, I'm never going to be like that. Other people just adopt those traits and pass them on to other people.
It happened to me, so now I'm doing it to you. No, I don't think that's the way to be. I think that, treating people like that is just, it's unacceptable. I don't think there's anyone that's not worth being treated with, at least to start.
Right.
Being treated with dignity and respect, and obviously there's a threshold for that.
Yeah.
Where I don't expect anyone to have to take abuse in the name of being nice to people. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's I think there's a reasonable threshold where you can finally go, hey man, I did everything I could. Go fuck yourself.
Now you're getting punched.
Yeah, exactly. Like now if you want to take it any farther than that, the door's that way, and I'll meet you outside. And hopefully it doesn't get to that. I would prefer that it doesn't, but if it does, I'm ready. And Steve's more ready than I am. But
Steve's very
I
ready.
can at least smother them in my giant folds of flab or whatever.
Your huskiness.
Yeah, my huskiness.
Well, yeah, and I think, obviously there's the stress relief aspect that would come with any sort of regular physical activity. I think from what I understand, that in the few times that I've gone, Jujitsu is a little bit more immersive than your typical, figuratively and literally, than your typical, running on a treadmill or using the elliptical or whatever.
Yeah. And it's that face-to-face.
You can get that type of stress relief, and I'm sure you've done it. I get it when when you really work yourself hard, where you just kind of zone everything else out. Maybe you're splitting wood, maybe you're building a cabin in the woods. I know that you had actually done that. I saw it on your property. It was phenomenal.
Thanks.
Anything like that where you just put your mind to a task and let everything else melt away while you accomplish that task. I even do that at work sometimes. I built a cornhole set that we gave away at an event that we went to,
charity event,
and I went out to just handle that issue, and I was gone out in the shop for 3-4 hours. Where he came out looking for me. He's like, "Well, where'd Steve go?" And I was I was in the zone. I was taking care of this thing. Put your mind to it, and it kind of lets all the other ancillary things melt away for a little bit. And then sometimes, my web design company was all over me that day for some stuff on the website, and that's one of the things. That's one of the things that melted away. And I came back to a bunch of emails and text messages. Hey, you were going to take care of this. Where is it? Michelle she was getting pretty aggressive with some of those requests because
she's a project manager. Got to manage projects.
Yeah, she does.
So,
but no, I actually read this book on. It was called The Science of Enlightenment. I can't remember who wrote the book, but basically they were studying brain patterns and meditation and what leads people to this sweet spot of creativity, almost inspiration. And one of the things that they talked about was that if it's an activity that requires some challenge, but maybe not too much challenge, like if it's extremely challenging, it's hard to get to that sweet spot of creativity. But if it's enough challenge to stimulate your mind, but you can figure it out, it's fully immersive, so you aren't focused on other things. And there's a couple of different aspects to it, but they said this is exactly how you get to that creative zone.
Right.
And I found it really, really interesting because they almost applied kind of a scientific method to achieving that state, which is really valuable to us as business owners, especially when we're trying to solve these unique challenges that no one has a pattern for. Like nobody has, I remember when I first started WeCreate, I would kind of Google things like how to run a successful web company, things like that.
At least to start to kick the ball rolling, and then you can pick it up from there. Yeah,
right.
I know what you mean.
But there's nothing there. You know what I mean? Like, because why is a successful web company gonna help me become like they're not gonna build a competitor. So like, why are they gonna write about that? But I found getting into that creative zone where you're almost meditative, solving problems, just kind of letting the thoughts flow is really valuable.
Yeah. And that's something that's a feeling that I can't speak for anyone else, but that's a feeling that I kind of chase when I'm at work. Because if there's one thing that my job entails, it's having 40 things to do at once at all times. So like Steve said, like when he went out to do a cornhole set, that's the only thing he had to do. It was etching it on the laser, sanding the edges, putting the box together, hinges, blah, 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 making sure everything is square and flat. And it's that point. It's that point where you can just only focus on that. For me, I do a lot of spreadsheets and stuff like that. And once you get into the multi-layer macros and stuff like that of all these different spreadsheets and stuff, or when I'm doing CNC programming, where it's 5,000 lines of code that you have to sequence and all of that, that's where I can just sit there, and once I hit that zone, you look up and it's been 3 hours, and you have something tangible that is completed. I so rarely get 3 hours uninterrupted. It's hard to get that, but I totally understand. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. And you feel so accomplished. You feel like you come out of it and like, oh my gosh, man, that's awesome. I still look at stuff that I made from years ago, and I'm trying to remember how I did it. And I'm going, my God, I was stunned.
I was a genius.
My God, man, this is, whew. Did someone else make this? This is awesome.
Yeah.
And I look back, I'm like, I don't know. If I made this, my God, I was having a good day.
Or you look back and found out that I made it.
Yeah, right. said no one ever.
So, Steve, you kind of came from retail management, right?
Right.
And curious, what was the most surprising thing about getting into a leadership position in a manufacturing company?
That's a good question. I can't wait to hear this.
Well, the thing about it is, so as you know, and now our viewers will know, I worked for the Walgreen Company for a very long time.
Yep.
I moved to Cleveland to accept a position, just an assistant management position, and I moved up pretty quickly to where I was running my own store. I ran one of the busiest stores in the Cleveland market at the time, and now I can honestly say it's one of the few that's still open, because they're closing a lot of stores now, unfortunately, after all we've been talking about. I mean, it impacted everybody, from the biggest places to the smallest. And the leadership at when you're working as Patrick Bet-David would say, an intrapreneur, where you're working for a huge company, but you're one of the good ones that's trying to put new ideas out there to help the company, your store in particular, but the company as a whole. I really found a niche doing that for a while. And the leadership in, say a store is very similar to what I'm doing now. Now, instead of sending out for the checks to pay a bill or to run payroll or those types of things, now I sign those checks.
Right.
But the leadership is very, very similar. It's being able to look at certain numbers. Like I would, for a retailer, you're always looking at volume, number of items sold per day, or at Walgreens we had a per 10,000, where they would, if your store sold X amount of items, they would average that out if you had 10,000 customers for that day. Okay. So that a high volume store could rank against a low volume store. Gotcha. And kind of see where they, it would kind of level the playing field to see who was, on average selling a better volume of items versus, and then the profit percentage on said items, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now, being a manufacturer and trying to do the same exact thing, it's a little more difficult, especially in the field that we're in, because if you're a retailer, you sell something, it costs you X, you sell it for Y, and you make Z percentage.
Yeah, because you don't make any of the stuff. You bought it for this.
In a woodworking company, it's very difficult to nail down a good, manufactured profit percentage, because you have to factor in waste, which you never know how much waste is going to come out. We expect to make so many doors per 1,000 feet of lumber, but if that pack is a pristine pack, we might make 2 or 3 extra doors out of that because we've got great utilization and had very little waste. Gotcha. But on the other side of that, say we want to make 20 doors out of this pack of poplar, and it's a terrible pack where there's lots of defects, lots of problems with the wood, we might only make 16. So nailing a profit percentage down on something like that when you have a waste factor involved is very difficult. And with a natural product, as Mike said it numerous times so far, you never know what you're going to get. And with the cost of everything going up, the profit has obviously dropped a little bit because, we can only increase prices so far because we can't price ourselves out of the market on things like that. But going back to the original point, very, very similar. Mm-hmm. The headaches, the stress points and stuff are very similar, only instead of answering to, say, your next level manager or the vice president of the region or the CEO of the company, now you don't answer to anyone but yourself, but then the people that you answer to are a bank or a government entity that oversees, say, safety, like OSHA or something like that, or any one of these other things that you have to, the IRS. Never had to worry about an IRS when I worked for Walgreens.
Yeah.
But now I have to worry about those types of things, make sure our taxes are done properly, make sure our safety policies are in place, make sure nobody gets hurt at work, because you deal with that directly now.
Right.
You fire somebody or have to let somebody go. Now, instead of forwarding on the request to fight the unemployment claim, I have to fight it personally. It's those types of things. So they're very similar, but just a little bit different. They're a different degree now. I guess that's the best way to put it. Is it's very similar, but it's just the intensity of those things is amped up a degree or two.
And the quantity, 10. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a lot more people to answer to, surprisingly, as an entrepreneur, than, when you just have to answer to your boss. Now you have the customer, you have the regulatory agencies, you have, you have a lot of different...
and then, you deal face-to-face with every vendor now. We buy lumber from 5 different companies, and I talk to those people that we're buying the lumber for when I order it. So I talk to those people. I talk to other vendors, whether we're buying hardware, whether we're buying glue, buying a part to replace on the CNC or, on any given machine, dealing with any building maintenance issues. You talk to all those people directly now, where it was just, hey, when I'm working for a big corporation, send an email and somebody deals with it. Somebody will show up and fix it. Yep. Now, those people show up and they come talk to me or Mike or, whoever I deem is better suited to handle that problem than me. And again, now we cut all the checks. So we're responsible to say, hey, I need this thing done on the web page, and my web design company says, oh, well, that's a really hard one. That's going to cost you $500,000. Yeah. Do you want to proceed? And then
we've never charged anybody for
Well, not yet.
Well, no, I was going to compare our process to the door, because you don't know how much waste is going to go into it. And I was going to say it's very similar when you're building a website for a customer, because some customers are really good at getting you the assets you need and giving you feedback on things. And so it's really hard to judge how much a website project is going to cost you to develop from project to project, even if the projects are very similar. But that was just going to be a little rip on you. But
hey, that's fine.
There was two. No, you guys are great.
I got big shoulders.
You guys are awesome. You guys are great customers. And honestly, who I think is a great customer, and Michelle is the same way, is people that we have a good relationship with, that we can joke, that if we are doing something wrong, you can just kind of hassle me a little bit about it, or I could hassle you a little bit about it, instead of having this big
professional meeting with a file folder. And, these are our list of complaints.
Right. No, that's a good relationship. There's 2 things that you mentioned I want to talk about. Number one, supplier diversification, and this is something that I brought up in a couple videos that I made, because I think when manufacturers think about diversification, they usually think about it in a very singular way. They say, I want to work with people in the aerospace industry, I want to work with people in the medical industry, and the industrial, whatever. But in my opinion, there's quite a few ways you can diversify, and quite a few ways you should diversify to have long-term stability. So obviously customer diversification is a great thing to have. I think that supplier diversification is also an important thing to have. So I was curious if your 5 suppliers of raw materials are there simply because they offer different materials, or because it's kind of a way for you to be able to say, hey, today these guys are going to give this to me at a better price, tomorrow these guys might.
Well, in the stuff you're talking about, I mean, I assume you're talking about lumber. That's kind of our main buying thing. You have certain suppliers that are better at certain things. you can call a local lumber company and say, oh yeah, I need 2,000 feet of African mahogany. And they're going to go, what? I don't carry that. Yeah. So we have a supplier for our imported stuff. We have several suppliers for our domestic stuff. We have some suppliers that are a little bit more expensive, but it's going to get there a little faster.
So it's all very functional.
Yeah, it's all a very functional thing. And I do my very best to shop the pricing of anything that I know is provided by a couple different vendors. Because I wouldn't go to a vendor if they, like, say I was buying poplar or something like that, pick one, red oak, whatever. And, I said, hey, I need 4,000 feet. And I'll ask 3 different people and say, hey, I need 4,000 feet. What's your price? And, I know all 3 of them are a comparable product. And their pricing is based off of what it costs them to get the lumber to them. So they have a specific metric on what they charge.
Right.
If their logs were more expensive, then they're going to charge me a little bit more. So it's purely a cost-driven purchase. But again, it's a cost and lead time thing. I mean, it's very common for us to have to call around and go, yeah, man, I need 4,000 feet of red oak. Oh, I got it. It'll be this price, but it's going to be like 3 weeks. Okay, yeah, let me get back to you. And then you talk to someone else, and it's comparable price, give or take a little bit, and they can have it here next week. Good. Yep. Next week it is. Yep. Depending on the client, if the client is in no hurry. A lot of our older clients that do, 7-8 houses a year, they buy from us because it's a true solid wood product, and they can sell that to their customer because it's universally accepted that real solid wood is a higher end product than, say, a high end MDF door. It's just kind of a universally accepted thing. And when they're buying their stuff, they know the score. They give us as much lead time as possible, and they say, yeah, I don't need these for 10 weeks or something like that. And we plan accordingly and make as much profit as we can and get them their stuff on time and hopefully move on to the next house.
Yep. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. And I guess the context that I've thought about supplier diversification, a lot of times I'm thinking about it in the context of, like a machine shop or an OEM that's hiring machine shops where when you're building a piece of machinery that's dependent on a set of parts and you can only push that machinery out your door if you have quality parts, then it's good in that context to have, even if you're not going to do a full quantity with this machine shop over here, you have a secondary vendor that you can say, hey, give me 10% of my parts. That way you've got 2 people that are in the game, 2 people that know the part. That way if somebody goes under, somebody has a problem with their ooperation, you've got somebody to fall back on.
Right.
So with you guys, it's a little bit different because you aren't dealing with necessarily a complex product that you're buying. It's just a price shop.
I mean, also, but with ours, we do have that to an extent. Like there used to be 2 suppliers of, say, tropical species. Well, now one supplier bought the other one. So now there's one.
Right.
So we can only get, say, our mahoganies and our Brazilian cherries and the tropical stuff from one place. But because they're so big, it's never been an issue.
Right.
West Coast species, there's really only one place. They sweep up everything and they bring it all from the West Coast, whether it's from Oregon or California or Washington. But the true domestics, everything that grows around here, your maples that Mike alluded to, oaks, Pennsylvania and New York and West Virginia.
Yeah, it's like the heartland of that particular product.
We're right in the middle of it. So we have 3 or 4 places that we can get lumber from there. And it was interesting because we just renewed our business insurance and stuff. And part of our business insurance now is supply interruption insurance.
Okay.
So if we were to say...
Again, a post-COVID...
So many things. It's part of our business insurance now where, say, I call a place to get African mahogany. We're out. Call this place. They might be able to help you. And I call that place and it's 10% higher. Well, now we have an insurance policy that would cover the difference.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
No, we've
until you actually file a claim, right?
And knock on wood, we've never had to use that.
Right.
It's never been an issue, but it's another thing, and yet another insurance policy. I know you and I talk about insurance and stuff all the time.
We love it.
Not always a great conversation in there, but that's just yet another thing
All I can say is I wish I had a product that the government mandated you buy my product from me, and there's only a couple of us out there that offer it. It would be really cool.
Yeah, there's only a couple that offer it, and they hand you money, and you give them back nothing.
Right.
For the majority of the time. I get a bunch of money, and I have to give you nothing at all.
And I get to
back.
invest it, make billions of dollars. And
you get to take that money and
then when you file a claim, you're like, you know what, we provided your service.
As soon as you file a claim, there is some loophole why they can't pay, unless it's blatantly obvious.
Yeah, man. As a small business owner, these challenges are just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And sometimes you question whether the government, local, state, federal, actually wants you to succeed.
Yeah. It seems like they throw more and more roadblocks up every year to, in my mind, I mean, and I don't think I'm too far off base here, small business is kind of the American dream. It's kind of the, like, look at you and Michelle. I mean, you went out and you said, hey, we're going to design, do web design, and you started it from, unless I'm mistaken, quite literally nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
You started from nothing at all, and through grit and determination and good salesmanship and, good business planning and all of that, made a business out of it. Mm-hmm. And this was the same thing with Allegheny Woodworks. It was started by two gentlemen who work for International Paper at the local plant here, Hammermill. Yep. And when I don't know the specifics of it, but I know they ended up closing because of union strikes and stuff like that. When that place closed up, the two of them got together and said, hey, man, why don't we do a business? Mm-hmm. And they came up with a list of businesses. They decided to do wood doors, bought a bunch of machines. It was just the two of them, making doors. And with the birth of the internet being such a I don't think anyone thought the internet would be such a marketplace for stuff. It started off just being, in my mind, kind of an informational tool.
Right.
And I don't know that anyone thought that when Amazon was just this place that sold a bunch of books, that it would turn into the number one supplier of, like, I could buy one dirty mismatched sock on Amazon if I wanted it. You know what I mean? Like, you can buy anything.
Yep.
So with the birth of the internet and, our growing web presence, I mean, we ended up, the original business plan was to be one of those places like, they would just sell to Lowe's. They would sell to Lowe's and Home Depot and contractors, stuff like that, and be kind of at arm's length. That was the original business plan. But with the way the internet blew up, like our website, it's solidhardwooddoors.com, because back then when someone searched via whatever search engine was available at the time, I don't even know, if you typed in solid wood doors, it came up with the actual, hey, this is a web address that is that.
Right.
And then that's how it was.
It used to be a big factor with Google, where if you had an exact match domain, as in you want to rank for these keywords, you have a domain that says those keywords.
Exactly, yep.
It would work. That's been really depreciated over the years, and now it's more or less the content that's on your page, the keywords that you're using on those pages. But yeah, I mean, the internet is the way to sell now. It really is. I mean, even for, I've talked to so many manufacturers that, you ask them, what is the method that you use to get business, or what have you used in the past? And they would always say, hey, we always got business word of mouth, but now that's not really happening so much. And I think part of it goes back to our earlier conversation about the benefits of, showing up to a class of dudes doing jujitsu, getting that face-to-face interaction. Well, we've got a whole generation of kids that are moving into procurement positions and administrative positions in manufacturing companies that have not operated like that.
Yeah.
And so their go-to method for finding something is the web.
Yeah.
Even for manufacturing services.
Yeah, and that's, it's very true. I cut my teeth in sales. I work for a bank called Charter One, which is now Citizens Bank. Mm-hmm. And it was my first job after I left Walgreens. It was my first job where I had to sell stuff.
Yep.
And it was that kind of sales that everyone in the sales game hates. It's that, you pull up to a business and you sit in your car and you're like, you're going to make a sale. You're going to make a sale.
This.
You can do this. You're good enough. You're smart enough. And people love you. and you walk in and you get your teeth kicked in. You're like, hey, I'm here to sell you a loan. I don't know if you need it or not, but I got them. And oh my gosh, that type of sales
It sucks.
It sucks so bad. But once you get a feel for it and you start growing those relationships where you walk in like, Janice, you know why I'm here. Hey, hang on. All right, hang on. I'll see if I can get
Your
you.
hair looks great today.
Yeah, you look beautiful. But that face-to-face interaction, being able to communicate with people face-to-face, effectively, is just a skill that I don't know. I mean, I have a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, and that face-to-face interaction, even making them have to do it, is just such a trial. Do
you think that's part of the reason why podcasts have become so popular?
I think
is it people kind of living vicariously through other conversations?
Watching people, when you watch, this podcast or Joe Rogan or whatever, name it, and you just see some people just sitting there talking, busting each other's balls, and like, yeah, man, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
I wish I could just sit and, smoke a cigar or whatever and just shoot the shit with someone, because that level of interaction is just so rare at this point. Like, us old people, we're like, hey, what do you want to do? It's never, let's get together via Zoom and talk.
Humans were designed to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we were designed to do. And men were designed to conquer. I mean, that's really what we are built to do. And I think that's another big draw for jiu-jitsu, is the fact that, it's a battle, right? You're physically encountering another male or female or whatever, and you're fighting. I mean, it's a simulated battle. And I think that's an incredibly important part of masculinity, is to have that sort of an outlet.
And it's so weird having, even in my very limited scope compared to him, because I try to get people into it, and you try to get people into it, and there are people who truly get freaked out with that level of interaction with a person. If you, try to think of the last time that you had to really, truly tussle with another person. And for a lot of us, it's
most people go
never
a lifetime. Yeah,
it's like they go their whole life without ever having to. You have these people that are like, oh, if it ever happened, I would. I saw Jason Statham kick the shit out of 50 guys. I can definitely do that. But when you have that reality in your mind, that's one of the first times I trained with a guy named Sean. Sean is this little tiny guy. He's smaller than you, which is to say small. And he's like, oh, well, we'll start off slow. And I'm like, okay, dude. I was a semi-state level wrestler. I was a fairly big guy. I was less fat than I am now, so I was very confident in my abilities.
Yeah.
He wrecked me with such ease. It's very difficult for a man specifically to just sit back and take that loss and go, oh my God, man, if this was a real fight, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
This little guy
would
have wrecked me. And to me, that's the draw of jiu-jitsu.
Right.
To be able to go into those interactions, at a bar or walking down the street or something like that, and at least have the knowledge that, hey, man,
you can defend yourself.
I can defend myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm fairly confident against most people.
Right.
But then you see someone like Steve, who's walking around with a smile on his face and all that stuff, and you think, hey, I'd beat the shit out of this guy, which some of us would. But it's like, oh, well, okay, well, fuck around and find out, man.
Yeah.
And
see what happens.
Most of the time that stuff never happens, especially in this day and age, because everyone's all about, hold me back. No, seriously, hold me back. Because once it gets down to a real thing, I don't know. I mean, I'm not advocating physical violence, but I think that having that as the last resort kind of puts everyone back to square one, where instead of just looking at my opinion and just shouting me down, it kind of forces you to respect the other person's viewpoint. You know what I mean?
I always say, man, a man learns more by getting punched in the face from another man than he would learn from years of schooling. I'll tell you what, you learn a lot of lessons in that moment. You think, how could I have protected myself better? Should I have kept my mouth shut? Was this a situation that I should have never been in? You learn a lot of things.
Should I have been just a tiny bit more open-minded and,
right.
Kind of went, well, you're not wrong. I just don't like the way you're saying it, or
Right.
whatever, but I think that, doing something like that, aside from the stress relief, because the stress relief is a thing, like it's, after a long day and, I'm sure you've had those days, we've all had them, where it's like you can't move without knocking something over. You can't make a decision without second guessing it later. You can't stand up without tripping on your feet. You just leave with just such a massive mental load that you just need to just drop away.
Yep.
And during those moments where you're rolling and you go, hey man, you mind if we go hard today? Okay, man, everything all right? Yep, let's go. And it's brutal to watch. Like it's hard rolling. And I would recommend anybody, to go to one of those places, even to watch a class. And, they do it with respect, and it's like tap, tap, tap. Okay. All right. You feeling okay? Yeah, man, I'm good. Let's go again. And there's a lot of sweat and a lot of swearing,
A lot of sweat.
and a lot of ball busting and a lot of, maybe if you'd not been such a bitch, I wouldn't have caught you, stuff like that. And it's,
But drawing it back to where we were going with that is, it's like playing a game of chess, where as if you're making decisions for a business or making a decision while you're on the mat, you're trying to think, well, if I do X, what's the outcome? If I do Y, what's the outcome? If I do Z, what's the outcome? And you're trying to train yourself to do that, but on the fly. Like you're moving. If I move here, in the case of Jiu-Jitsu, if I move here, what's he going to do, or what's she going to do?
Yep.
And then if I move here, what could come here? If I move to this position that I think I can get to, what will happen?
Yep.
And then in a business setting, it's the same thing. If we commit to having that roof fixed, how are we gonna, what's the decisions down the line to make sure we can pay for that note? If we replace this machine, how much training do we have to put into an employee to make him run a new machine versus the old machine, which was really easy?
Yep.
you got to be 5 moves ahead.
If we add a new door design, how's that going to impact the manufacturing line when those parts hit the certain stations, because they take 5 times as long to run? In our case, the arch tops that Mike, we started running, and you're building a web page for us on them, and they've been phenomenal.
Yep.
It's whatever we're talking about. It's having that ability to think several moves ahead.
Yep.
Maybe not so much 5, but 3 I think is a good bellwether to always be 3 moves ahead. And then when things go right or they go wrong, being respectful to the people you have to interact with, either to make them successful or to tell them that this was a bad move. It's not just sending an email saying, per my last email we start this. When I see the per my last emails, I automatically know it's either going to get deleted or man, I forgot about something, or I would rather talk to someone. That's why I call you all the time. When I have a problem, I don't just send an email.
Right.
Or not even a problem, or just an idea. I'd rather talk it through first. And going back to where we started this at, we definitely lost that. I think for certain we've lost that, at least in the current generation. When you can't talk to someone face to face like we're doing right now, which is why I think, back to again what you were saying, I think podcasts are huge. This gives an example. Somebody could watch this and go, those guys really interact well. How do I do that? I need to really try doing that. And that's going to give younger people skills to interview for that job, or maybe make that sales pitch to why they're the right person for a position within the company they already work for, or sell order of doors to a customer who might have had a bad experience with another place. How are we going to get around that? Well, I got to sell myself to this person.
Yeah.
But being able to talk confidently, and I'm not even close to as good as he is, but I'm pretty good.
I'd give you that, pretty good. yeah, fairly okay. Fairly okay.
Yeah.
Journeyman level.
I give myself a D+, because D+, that's not a grade people like to give out. That's a hard one to get.
It's a hard one to get.
Hard one to get. But,
they don't like to give those D+.
But the podcast platform that we're talking about here, I think it's critical, because young people will watch a podcast just like that.
Yeah.
And they'll stay focused on a podcast. And I'm just going from experience with my kids. Or I put a movie on. They're looking for a podcast to watch while the movie's on, not pay attention to the movie, but they'll pay attention to a podcast, whether that podcast is telling them how to manicure their nails or how to play Roblox. That's
or how to cook ramen noodles a different way or whatever. I mean, I don't know, the podcast space, I think it's been awesome. And we all know the very few people that launched podcasts, that made podcasts, like Joe Rogan and places like that, where even going all the way back, just being able to watch these guys interact and kind of get just watch them riff back and forth. I mean, I particularly like Joe Rogan because most of the time it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But he manages to get some
super
good information on there. You're like watching a COVID scientist talk about COVID going, that's not what I heard.
Yeah.
Like, I just looked on the news today and we're all going to die. And,
I honestly think that's the biggest, that's the reason why I watch podcasts, because I feel like it's the one place that I can get information that diverges from what the mainstream media tells me is reality.
Right. And it's like, I don't know, in my vision, it's how the news should be. It should be like, hey, everyone's afraid of COVID. What we did is we got a panel of scientists here. What are their thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Why, I don't understand why that would have been so difficult.
Right.
Why would that have been so difficult?
Yeah. They didn't want you to hear other points of view.
Yeah. But in this day and age where it drives me crazy. I came home and it was a rough day, so I was kind of, not the perfect father at the time, because I was frustrated and all that.
Yeah.
And I come home and both of my girls are sitting there watching the television, just wrapped. And what are they watching? They're watching someone play Resident Evil.
Okay.
Watch it. It's a 3-hour long snippet of watching someone play Resident Evil.
Wow.
I'm like, what Resident Evil?
Talk about vicarious.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
living.
What Resident Evil is that? Oh, I think Resident Evil 6 or one of them, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we could just buy the game. Do you want to buy the game and play it? No, I don't want to play it. It looks really hard. But you'll watch someone play it.
Yeah.
But you won't play it. I don't know. For me, I mean, it looks like a cool game. You sure you don't want to just play the game?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah, this part's so cool. Watch this. And I'm like watching them beat some boss that starts off as some big boobed lady and changes into some big giant undead plant thing, and I'm going, what the heck? It looks fun. You sure? I'll buy it right now. We can go to Walmart or wherever. We'll buy it right now. We can play it together. What do you think?
It's baffling.
Yeah, it's baffling.
I wonder what this psychology.
Yeah,
is.
I do not know, but it's very, very common.
Yeah.
I know the one time, I think it was Livy was on the phone with Samantha, his oldest daughter, and they were on the phone watching a YouTube video of someone doing something, like playing a game, talking about it, where they could play the game together.
Yeah.
We have the technology to play a game together over long distances, and it's so much better to them to just watch someone play it. It's some ASMR thing where it's like you don't have to have the frustration of actually playing the game and losing over and over again, because that's what happens. And I don't know, it drives me nuts. So
maybe
even to
we
this
could make
day,
a market for like watching people watching something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it'd just be a box inside of a box inside of a box. Just yeah. Well, look at the reaction to this, like reaction videos.
Oh, I've been seeing
watching
these.
people react to other people's reactions to a thing. Like
the first time I saw one, I was like, I was trying to figure out what was happening. I was like, is this person actually saying something? Oh no, they're just watching somebody saying something.
Yeah.
And reacting.
Where you'll watch, like they'll. Bill Burr, like a comedian or something, will be doing one of his sets because he manages to take really offensive material and make it, so you can swallow it without being offended.
Right.
And it's like watching a bunch of different people react to this. Like where, he has something about, I don't know, something that we probably shouldn't mention on a podcast. Like, I'm not saying he should have hit his wife, but I think you should probably ask why it happened.
Right.
If you got bit by a rattlesnake, the first thing people would ask, well, how did you get bit by a rattlesnake? Did you kick the snake? Did you poke it with a stick? What happened?
Right.
And he has a big thing about it. You can look at, there's a million snippets of it out there, and he manages to put it off for it's hilarious.
Right.
And you're watching these people that tried to be upset about the material, but end up laughing at the end of it. And you just, okay. So you couldn't just get that reaction for yourself. You had to make sure that other people were okay with it.
Right.
And I think that's what it is.
That is.
I think it's a validation where in this day and age you watch something, because I'm a big fan of blue comedy. If you can't laugh about crazy stuff,
right,
then, you're way too serious.
Yeah, you're sick, yeah.
And, you watch people react to this stuff where some people would be like, oh my God, should I laugh at that? I don't even know. And then you watch these reaction videos of
it's okay to feel like that now.
Okay, these people thought it was funny too, so I can laugh.
Now I know how to feel.
Which, again, is some type of weird mental thing where you can't even feel comfortable having a reaction, like a genuine reaction to something just for yourself, without having some type of validation from someone else.
So would it be safe to say that people that like watching reaction videos subscribe to a certain worldview?
It's very possible. Because they're addictive to watch. I mean, I guarantee anybody watching them, it's most of the ones, at least that I've interacted with, it's just watching someone else have that pure moment of joy when they get their mind turned around and laugh at something that you thought was funny also. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it for years. Like sitcom laugh tracks. Yeah, if they didn't have the laugh tracks in the background, you weren't sure how to feel. Or you watch any of the old comedy things, Martin Lawrence or something like that. It's not just him. They cut to the crowd over and over again, so you can see these people just falling out laughing about what he's saying. It's like, man, it looks like what he's saying is hilarious.
That's interesting.
And it's, I don't know what type of, dark magical psychological tool, but they've been doing it for years and years.
Yeah, it's almost like a mass hypnosis in a way. Like, for example, if you were at a comedy club listening to a skit and you took everyone else out of the room, I wonder how much you would laugh.
Right.
A lot of hilarity is in...
I think that for someone who is uncomfortable with that type of stuff, you would watch the funniest thing ever and maybe go, I'm one of those people, if I think it's funny, everyone else can go fuck themselves. I'll laugh my ass off. And I don't know, because I am a huge fan of comedy, and, going back to Joe Rogan, like, they say some awful stuff on there, like stuff that, like, under any other circumstance you'd be like, oh my God, man, what are you saying? Jeez. But even, you still get a laugh.
Yeah.
But because it's a whole bunch of people sitting there laughing back and forth and saying this off the wall stuff and still laughing, and all, you're just like, oh my, maybe I don't have to be so serious.
And it might just tie back into the people will watch the reaction videos to see if it's, I guess, am I trying to say it would be socially acceptable to laugh at something?
Right.
Like that, like they're looking for validation to say, well, that made me laugh. Should I laugh? Yeah. Well, other people are doing it. I'll laugh.
Yeah.
Because
it was back.
It's very odd the way society is right now, especially when it comes to comedy. Because I don't know how comics are doing it these days. Because there's so many people that, instead of looking for a reason to be offended, which it seems like where we're at. I mean, just look at the reviews for any given restaurant or dentist or anything. Like, we're looking for a reason to be upset about something instead of taking an experience for what it is and say, yeah, that made me laugh. I laughed a lot. It was great. And we're looking for a reason to tell ourselves it's okay to be entertained or to enjoy a meal or something along those lines. And if the podcasts get people back to that spot where they can be comfortable saying, yeah, Nate, he was really funny last night, or Mike cooked a really good meal, I'm allowed to say that, or it was horrible, I'm allowed to say it,
right?
And not
without it being a big deal,
without it being a big deal,
because I mean, you're policing people's words in the way the thing is, you can police people's words all you want, but in the end, people still feel the way that they feel. You should be able to say that. You should be able to express your thoughts without having to worry about some national backlash because, this evil human being felt some way. I mean, just get out of here. It's ridiculous. So I want to jump back to something we were talking about before because I'm really, really pissed off.
Oh, okay. Great.
You don't look like you're very pissed off.
This is going to go well.
So this is, it's been kind of lingering. It's been bubbling under the surface. And there's a lot of branches to it, but the one expression of it I saw the other day, I was talking to one of my customers in a machine shop, and this guy, mind you, he's very, very rule-oriented, by the book. He's won like safety awards from the NTMA, and he does things right, and he's always trying to improve and do a good job at what he's doing. So he's a great guy. So I got on a call with him and said, how's things going? He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, what's up? And he said, we just had a rough week. I'm like, why'd you have a rough week? Well, OSHA people walked in.
Oh, shit.
God.
See, now I know why. All right.
And they found abstract things that there was no specific rules on. There's nothing that said you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you don't do this, here's the penalty. They walked in, and of course, they ignore all the things that are being done right and safely and everything, and found these things that really don't probably have any effect on people's safety, but they give OSHA a mechanism to find people at will.
Yeah.
And so he walked out of it with a $6,300 fine. And it isn't a situation where they came in and said, hey, we noticed you guys are doing a great job overall. Here's some things that you need to work on. We're going to come back in 2 weeks.
Yep.
And if they're not fixed, you're going to get a fine.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be done.
That's the way it should be done.
But it's not. They come in and, it's weird. You have long talks with these OSHA people, and they're just trying to do their job. So I'm not by any means shitting on OSHA people. This is their job, and, it's the government's issue, not theirs. But for every rule that says X, there's an opposing rule that says Y. Mm-hmm. So when they walk in there, you will be fine.
You will be fine. This guy said, his cohorts told him he's lucky because they told him to expect $15,000 to $20,000.
Oh, yeah, the minute they walk in, yeah. Because we were told, and, we were told, anyone who would be watching this is familiar with how a saw works. Mm-hmm. In order for a saw to cut wood, it has to touch the wood.
Right.
And you can buy a saw at any Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. It has a little guard. You pull it down, the guard comes back, and we got fined on one of those because somebody could cut their finger. Mm. And I'm like, well, so are you asking me to redesign to make a cut-proof saw? A cut-proof saw doesn't have a blade on it. Right. You have to be able to cut wood with it. And if you put your finger in place of where the wood would be, you can cut yourself. That is simply the way these things work.
Or maybe if you're a billion-dollar operation, you could have a robot sitting there feeding things precisely and everything like.
So it's basically you're saying that if you have. So what I was told when I tried to communicate without being angry, which is very difficult. And these OSHA people, they're always so sympathetic most of the time, unless you're a jerk to them. They're very sympathetic because I can't even imagine that job where you go in. Everyone hates you when you walk in. Every single person hates you.
Well, why don't they all just quit if they hate it so much? It would be nice. Yeah, just everybody quit.
But I was told, in a nutshell, hey, if it is possible for an employee to hurt themselves on a machine, it's your job to make sure that they can't. And I'm like, well, that's one of those very, very liberal sayings because
there's no personal responsibility
on its
there.
Surface. It sounds like, what are you, a ogre? Why would you not want your people to be safe?
Right.
But at the end of the day, the technology does not exist for what you're saying. I can hurt myself walking through that door. Mm-hmm. I can hurt myself tripping over my shoelaces. That means no more shoelaces. Yeah. I drive a car every day. More deaths by car than most things. There is no perfectly safe environment. Now, the last thing that anyone wants ever is to have one of their employees hurt.
Absolutely.
You have a vested interest in those employees producing for the company.
Right.
At its core. That sounds very, cold, but that's, when you need someone to pack cars at Walmart, you have a vested interest in that person being able to walk to pack the cars. Right. Or whatever. So nobody wants anyone to be hurt, and everyone cares about, a safe work environment.
Yep.
This isn't the, 1910 where they were just throwing people into a furnace, and if someone fell in the cement,
Yeah.
they say like, oh yeah, write them off, keep pouring the cement.
Or people are falling off the skyscrapers in New York.
Yeah, exactly. You see people just walking free across beams this wide.
Yep.
Throwing white hot rivets.
And it's just like trade unions. I mean, there is a point in history where trade unions were vital. Because
absolutely necessary.
Employees were being mistreated by their employers and taken advantage of. Unsafe work conditions, poor wages. They had no other options.
Yeah, truly unsafe, not fictionally unsafe.
So at this point, just like that, it's outlived its usefulness, in my opinion. Unless there is some gregarious, employer who's just, making his employees balance on an I-beam, 100 feet above the floor to complete a job with no safety harness, get the hell out of here.
Right.
I mean, it's just another tax. It's just another fine.
Yep.
And it's just another insult, kick in the pants to small businesses that are just trying to succeed and trying to do the best they can.
And I, to your point, I think that's how it should run. I think that if OSHA shows up, you should be able to be open and honest, have them walk through the shop and have them go, hey, these are the problems that I see. I'm going to stop back in 3 weeks.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that you've addressed these, and I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
But that's not the point of it. The safety has not been the point for a long time.
The point is money.
It's the money that's the point.
Yep.
Because, I don't know, we went through the last time, and, I don't know, we got fined because somebody had a box fan, a plastic box fan.
Yep.
And that is not OSHA approved to be used. So he wasn't supposed to have it out there. He knew he wasn't supposed to have it out, and so we reprimanded him for it.
Why do they have a rule about box fans?
I don't know. Because someone apparently the box fans that OSHA is used to, you could stick your hand in and it would just chop your arm off into little pieces. I don't know. I mean, a box fan, you could reach your finger in and stop it. It's plastic. It's a plastic box fan that they sell at any Walmart that is approved for use with children and pets and all that stuff. Nope. Not allowed to have it. Not allowed to have it.
It goes back to like they require certain things, and a commercial or a residential grade fan doesn't have the third prong on it, the grounding.
The neutral,
so that was the reason it was given for this particular one. But the whole as Mike said, every employer wants everyone to be safe. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Especially in a small business setting where these people.
Yeah.
The person, the person's spouse, the person's kids a lot of the times. Sometimes those people come to work for you later in life. So you always want people to say, hey, my dad worked for We Create. I want to work for that place because that's a good place to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a safe place. And nobody is trying to make an unsafe work environment, especially where we're at now, where something like that, something happens untoward, could go national or worldwide in a video and destroy the reputation of a person or a business.
Yep.
But the problem I see with government entities, especially in like OSHA or the Department of Health or the IRS, pick any of the big ones, is not only do they make the rules, they make the penalties, and they don't communicate the rules and the penalties.
Yep.
And you either comply with something you may or may not have known was a rule, or you pay the fine.
Yep.
And there's no gray area in that. There's no safety net there. They show up and you're done. That's the way it works. And in our case, we're fortunate that it was it was a whole list of trifles, little things, and nobody got hurt at our place. Nobody, there was not a fire, there wasn't an explosion, there wasn't anything like that. It's just, but when you make the rules and you enforce the rules,
and you set other rules in opposition to those rules, it's a lot like taxation.
You're letting yourself have any mechanism. You're saying that when I walk in your door, I absolutely can find a way to take money
forever.
from you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's a mafia situation.
Yeah. I mean, nobody gets audited or goes through an OSHA inspection without paying.
Well, and there's only one organization, because that's the other thing too, is a lot of times accountability comes in the form of, okay, there's 3 different providers of this service. So if one is doing a lousy job, you can go to another one. And in this particular case, there's only one. So you've got a situation where they can even retaliate against you if you want to say this is bullshit. I don't approve. I'm not paying this fine. Okay, we'll be in next week then.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe the following week, and we're going to continue to till you're 6 feet under.
Yep, and it's kind of weaponizing the government, which we've seen a lot of in this day and age, and it's out there for everyone to see. When you weaponize those things against a person or businesses or whatever, it's never a good thing. I mean, OSHA, to start, again, like labor unions, was a very good thing. It was an excellent thing. It was making sure that every employee doesn't have to go to work and walk across a 12-inch I-beam, 800 feet above the ground, and if you fell, you fell, man. Don't fall.
Yep.
That type of stuff.
Yep.
But there are so many laws in place now to prohibit that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
That if I was running an unsafe shop, which we certainly are not. I mean, safety is the core component of everything that we do. Like every shop in America, I would imagine, safety is the core component of everything.
Mm-hmm.
If we were running an unsafe shop and someone got hurt, you would get sued out of existence.
Right.
if
That's
you
the
were
thing
doing
is there's
unsafe
mechanisms.
things, yeah.
There's mechanisms to address those issues that diverge from the norm. So if you have that accident, yes, you have insurance, you're going to get sued, something's going to happen. And so there's no reason to have this other mechanism where they're just arbitrarily, what are they doing with this money anyways?
And it's become a, just a profit center for the government, which in turn becomes a cost of doing business, which in turn raises prices, which is why China, who doesn't give a shit about safe work environments or anything like that, they do not care, at all, where they can make things for a fraction of the price.
Yep.
A lot of times
they probably love OSHA.
They think it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
I can imagine,
screwing over your own businesses.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Let's, tax them or fine them out of business, and that's it. So
and there's other organizations too, like BIU. The monopoly building inspecting people here in town. They have stolen millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of value out of our economy, shutting down projects, making these abstract demands that, shut down, people that are in the middle of constructing something for no good reason. I've heard so many stories. I know so many people that have been hurt by them. And it's like, you can't go to anybody else. You got to get your building inspected. So if these guys don't like you, you're screwed.
You're done, You're
screwed.
Yep.
And that's not America. That is garbage.
Well, we do a lot of work with new construction and stuff like that because, every hole in your house needs a door. You know what I mean? And I've heard every horror story you can imagine where, the building inspector showed up and, one of the contractor's guys mouthed off to the building inspector. So now all of a sudden he's really got his pencil sharp. And instead of having maybe one problem that can be fixed, now you have 12.
Yep.
That type of stuff. I mean, it's a cliche thing. I mean, you see it on movies and all that stuff where, the building inspector's mad at you. All of a sudden, everything gets shut. I mean, it's a cliche, and it's sad that cliche is real life.
It's like reality,
I can't even imagine in some place like New York City or, Los Angeles where the overregulation is catastrophic. Multiple permits to do one, like you have to get a permit to get the permit,
right? But
you get the first permit and then apply for the second permit because now you have the first permit, but while they're approving the second permit, the first permit outdates. So then the whole process has to get, we've heard the whole, heard it. We had a guy who had to build a retaining wall behind his house. He was building an addition onto his house, and in order to build the addition, because his house has been there since the 20s or something like that, had to build a retaining wall or something behind his house to build this addition. So he got permits to build the addition. They said, in order to do, you need the retaining wall. So then he had to get a permit to build the retaining wall, which required its own section of permits. and then the retaining wall itself was going to be more than the cost of the home. And then by the time they worked through it and found a way around or whatever and petition this, petition that, the original building permit expired, they had to apply for it again.
Yep.
And it's like $5,000 or some crap for the permit or whatever.
It's
And
just sick.
like it's just this rotating door of just shelling out money,
Yep.
just constantly
Yep.
shelling out money.
And the only ones who can afford it, and we're seeing this, I heard some statistic the other day, like there's like 8 companies that when you combine those 8 companies, they have more than 50% of the GDP of the entire country. So every other business put together is less than these 8 companies.
Right.
That's the problem. And it's getting to the point where unless you're one of these massive conglomerates, you can't afford the tax professionals and the regulatory professionals and everything else that you need to even just run a business. Because you need to have everything to be able to deal with the government regulations.
Yeah. I mean, I know for us specifically in regards to taxes, I mean, we have to hire, and we hire a very reputable company. We have HBK. They do our taxes for us. And phenomenal company to work with. They're very good to make sure that they cover every stinking
they do a good
loophole
job
of corporate tax and stuff like.
Yep.
It's just a quagmire of opposing rules and all that stuff, and it just costs a lot of money. I mean, and again, those types of things roll into the cost of doing business.
Yep.
And which goes back to the price of goods. So all the regulation and stuff like that, no one's in business just to be able to employ people. You want to be able to turn a profit. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's an entrepreneur wants to know that all of this, where I used to have a full head of hair, and it used to be like black hair and all that stuff, and I didn't used to have this, and all of that was worth it at the end.
Yeah.
You put up your house, you put up your car, he put up his house and car, all that gamble pays off in the end.
Right.
And it seems like government is trying to make it so, any business, their sole purpose should be tax revenue to the government and employing people.
Right.
And that's it.
Yep.
No profit, no, nothing. I know that I'm sure there's a certain strata of left-leaning people that just go, if you made profit, you should give all that to the government.
Mm-hmm.
Any profit goes to the government because they know how to spend it better than you do.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, and the roadblocks that are put up for business, all of them, whether you've got one employee, like whether you're employing yourself to do a thing, or it's a mega company, the biggest one in the world's Amazon. Every one of those businesses started out as a small business. Mm-hmm. Amazon was a small business once. Walmart was a small business once. Yep. General Electric was a small business once. All of them were. And we've lost that now. The crushing financial burdens and regulatory burdens on all businesses, but the little ones, the ones in the middle, are the ones that really struggle with it. I mean, Amazon doesn't care anymore.
No.
Walmart doesn't care anymore.
No, and I'm sure they get all their money back from the government one way or another.
Yeah.
Influencing regulation.
When you can move your product 1 penny and cover anything, that's where Amazon's at.
Right.
They move it a half a penny. A small business, you have to move it 3 or 4%.
Yeah.
And that gets you into the area where you're pricing yourself out of what you're trying to sell, and you ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it to look down?
I think all small business owners have asked themselves that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think there's one that hasn't. And is it worth it at the end of the day, or do I pack up shop and go deliver packages for Amazon?
Right.
Or
how do we fix this?
God, I think if I could answer that, I should be running for office.
No, you shouldn't, because there's nobody that's running for office that has a good answer.
Yeah, that is even trying to stop inflation and stuff. I mean, everyone talks about it, but when you say, hey, what's your plan to stop it? Nobody has, because this type of thing, I mean, you have to have people who are willing to spend, and you have to let capitalism kind of do its thing. I mean, we're very lucky with the niche that we have and the quality of product that we have, where we experienced the housing bubble burst and all of that and came through it strong, and all the things in between, when a certain president took office and the bottom dropped out of the market, you know, and people weren't willing to spend a single dime, you know, and it just every manufacturer feels the same pinch. I mean, unless you have a bunch of government contracts, which are nice.
Right.
I mean, we do some wood products for the government here and there, embassies and army bases, stuff like that. They're kind of few and far between, but yeah, I mean, I wish I had an answer that would fix it, because I know when I first came into even thinking about any of this stuff, it was the late 80s, because I was only like 10 or 12, and we were learning about that type of stuff, which they don't teach anymore. Right. You know, they don't teach how to pay your taxes, how to balance your checkbook, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
They don't teach any of that stuff anymore. Personal finance, that type of stuff. And,
nutrition.
Yeah, nutrition. Yeah. Well, they'll tell you not to eat stuff, but then, you know,
as long as you're vaccinated for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Go,
yeah, be your 70-second booster. But you know, they don't teach any of that stuff in classes anymore, and it's a difficult road for people nowadays, trying to learn how to navigate all this stuff. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it would behoove if someone was going to come in and say, we need to fix this. The problem is delivering what is causing the problem to people, and just saying this is what it is. You know, the reason why prices are going up is because of this. Well, what caused that? Is it government regulation? Is it overpriced? You know, whatever. There's a cost that goes into making any given thing, whether it's a screw that holds your door into the frame, or a gallon of milk, or whatever. What is causing those prices to go up? And a lot of people just fall back, and the easy answer is, oh, it's corporate greed. Well, I don't know that that's 100% of it. There has to be an onus for a business to sell a product. Again, whether it's an anchor screw or a gallon of milk, and the onus for a business is to make a little bit of money and take good care of their employees and whatever it is. But what are the other reasons outside of the corporate greed? I mean, all you have to do is get on social media and everybody parrots corporate greed, right. You know, including, you know, our elected leaders and stuff, such that they are. And, well, why is it so high, and why do corporations keep raising the prices while they're still making money? It's like, well, yeah, they are making money, but that's what they're there for. But why is the cost so high for them to make that money? Is it, what is causing the cost of the raw materials to go up? What is causing the cost of labor to go up? What is causing everything to go up? Because it's all circular. If you raise one part of the equation, the rest of it goes up.
Right.
So it's circular. You mandate that this has to cost X. Well, the rest of it all goes up then. And then the end product goes up. Someone who is going to fix the problem such that it is, and I don't know that it can be fixed, at least not quickly, has to identify what goes into what makes any given product that we're trying to sell go up in price. And a huge portion of that is the government. Yeah. It's the government, whether everything you pay to the government, whether it's a fine or a fee or a surcharge, is a tax. That's what it is. Or if it's called a tax, whether it's an income tax or a payroll tax, you know, it's all a tax where you're paying it back to the government. You buy a car, you pay sales tax on it, then you pay your registration every year, which is just another tax. And everything has those types of things on it. And when, I guess the short answer, in a long way, long-winded, people have to hear my terrible voice say this, is when are our elected leaders going to talk about reducing government spending instead of finding a way to take more money from the American people? Whether that American person is worth $1 trillion or worth 58 cents.
Right.
You know, because if I'm worth 58 cents, they still want their 39%.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, when do we say, well, this program doesn't need to be funded and this program doesn't need to be funded? And I'll tie it all back to a show I watched. It was a great show called The West Wing, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it. Yeah.
Most people have seen at least an episode of The West Wing. It was, Martin Sheen's probably crowning work outside of a couple of his movies that he did. And there was an episode in there where the one character that was played by Rob Lowe was tasked with cutting government reports, right? Cut this report, it'll save $1 million. Cut this report, it saves $700,000. Cut this report, cut this, because this. And he's just cutting. And he gets into an argument with an intern. And, well, why are you cutting all these reports? And he says, well, if I cut these reports, I can save the taxpayers whatever the number was, $700 million.
Yep.
We'll say that's the number. And she goes, well, then every American is going to be so happy you just saved them a nickel. And that's the reason given to not cut the reports. Because it doesn't, to the average person, it comes down to a nickel or a dime or a quarter.
Yep.
But the problem is we've let that type of stuff go for so long that it's not a nickel or a dime or a quarter anymore.
You add a bunch of nickels
it's
together.
It's $15 or $20 or $100 for every person.
Yeah.
Which still sounds small in this day and age, but multiply it out, that is a boat, like a literal boat.
We've just let the sloppiness and the inefficiency go for so long that all of these things are just funded just because they always have been, and no one's willing to say, no, we need to scale some stuff back here.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean axing huge programs like, we'll say, Social Security. We're never going to axe Social Security. We're not going to get rid of our Army.
Yeah.
We're not going to defund Medicare. But we need to find other places where it's just wasteful spending.
Yeah. And
every year, Rand Paul does his airing of grievances, where he puts out I don't know how big it was this past year, but in years past, it's 100, 200, 300 pages of things that you see that we're spending money on from the federal government level you just read them and you go, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is a little booklet about this thick with 100 pages of things.
Yep.
How many of those are there? Even
well,
if there's
even
one
looking
per page.
at the PA state budget. I mean, I recently looked at what they published for the PA state budget or whatever got signed off on by Shapiro. And so the vast majority of this pie chart, as I remember it, was for, like K through 12 education. Okay, well, we can maybe accept that, right? Education is important.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is grades are declining. Kids are not getting educated. Mm-hmm. They're not getting smarter. They're not getting more functional. So we know that money is somehow being misspent. So then even take a step from there, you'll see funding for all sorts of special interests. One of them was like a couple $1 million for EV charging station infrastructure or something like that. Well, I mean, that's a privately driven sort of scenario. I mean, if you want to buy a electric vehicle, then whoever's manufacturing those should be able to install EV charging ports.
Right. Yeah.
Go
to the gas company, go to Shell or Exxon or something, and say,
hey, we want to put in a charging
port. Did the government pay you to start a gas station? No, that's your own private venture.
Right.
To start a gas station and all that. So they need to have some entrepreneur that goes out and have Nate Wheeler charging stations everywhere.
Yeah, and if it was profitable, hell, I'd do it. But it's not.
But I think that's the thing, is that no one's just willing to dig like that. They're just not willing to dig to get to the root of the problem, because the root is going to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's going to take somebody that gets a majority of the populace to understand. Like, people will understand if you lay it out and say, this is what's happening, guys.
Well, and that's the point of Rand Paul's list is, doesn't he tally it up at the end, like, hey, it's like, and it's ridiculous, like stuff that is so outlandish that you can't imagine it, like do hummingbirds fornicate more if they're given cocaine? Like, that's, I think I'm almost positive that's a real one.
No, believe it or not, that was one of the
it's a
examples.
real thing.
It was a government program that was funded, and I can't remember how much it was. It wasn't a huge amount, maybe $100,000 or something.
Yeah.
To find out, and I think it was quail, it wasn't hummingbirds, if they mate more when they're given cocaine. So we're using government money to do
I've
research.
I've lost a lot of sleep over that question.
Yeah,
So I'm glad somebody's
going
going
to
solve it.
It's 100 pages of that crap.
But a guy like me looks at it and goes, so wait a minute, you're using government taxpayer money to buy illegal drugs to give them to wildlife.
Right.
Why in the hell would we do that?
Where's PETA on that one?
Why in the hell would we do that? And you can, I'm sure there's millions of them like that, and it's just a drip here, a drip here, a drip here, a drip here, and all of a sudden the dam is leaking.
Yep.
and fixing it is not going to be easy, and it's going to be painful.
No, because there's people that benefit from all those stupid programs.
Because if you take away the quail program, we'll say, well, that's 5 people that are now unemployed. And if you say, oh, well, this department of the government, they really don't do anything, well, that's 100 people that are unemployed. And the federal government's the biggest employer in the whole world.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's back in the Obama administration, to pad the unemployment numbers, they created a whole boatload of government jobs. But I think back to how to fix inflation, again, I'm an idiot, and I know basic math. I think that in order for capitalism to work, you have to have multiple people who sell the same product, going back to your vendor diversification.
That's what antitrust laws were put in place.
Yeah, so if you only have 10 places that make milk, you have to buy from those 10 places, and they set the price. And once they all kind of decide that the price is at a certain level, then that's what the price is. But the point of capitalism is, like we had a dairy, even locally here, Meadowbrook Dairy. It was, Edinburgh?
Well, Meadowbrook was in Erie.
Yeah, for a while. And so we had local milk. So the cost of milk was much lower.
Right.
Now they couldn't afford to keep going. They had to close up and all that stuff. So now we get milk brought in from God knows where.
Probably regulations. Yeah. That those 10 companies lobbied the government for, so that they could shut out competition.
Exactly. So, and shutting out all the mom and pop places to, when I first moved back to Erie, I lived on 31st and Raspberry, and there was a place called Greenberg's, little tiny mom and pop grocery store. You can go there, get some canned goods, get some bag of chips, made the delicious subs and all that. And we would walk up there. I would walk my kids up there, and we would get, and I'm not an old man. This is only like 10 years ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I would walk my kids up there, get them an ice cream bar, get a sub, and maybe some macaroni and cheese and all that. Yeah, they couldn't stay afloat. So then we started going to Tops, which was right down the road. That's closed now too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And just forcing that competition to a smaller and smaller and smaller circle of people.
Yep.
And now the government wants to step in and say, well, we've decided that you're only allowed to charge a certain amount, which I can understand from someone's perspective how that would be attractive, to just have big brother government come and control everything. But once they control everything, they control everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if they decide that you don't get to keep all your money, you don't.
Right.
And if, whatever the whole point of, our country in general is to keep government small.
Right.
The government is not supposed to be this, overarching royal entity that tells you how to spend your money, and tells you how much you need, and tells you how many kids you're allowed to have, and all of that stuff. Because, I don't know, but we're getting closer and closer to that. And I think, like Steve said, the bloated government, no one asks, well, why does the government need all of this extra money? No one, when I was growing up, when I remember watching Ronald Reagan, again, this was when I first became aware of these things. Ronald Reagan, every single person who was on TV that wanted to get elected, every platform was no new taxes, reducing government spending, blah, blah, blah. You get to keep your money, blah. And nowadays, they have these people going out to these crowds going, we are going to tax more and make the America, what? And people are cheering about people getting taxed more.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, if we can learn anything from history, back during the Russian famine and all that stuff, when at the height of where they just collapsed, that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. They said, "Hey, this substrata of people has way too much money.
It's Marxist philosophy.
All of us people are going to take that money, and then when that money's gone, you go to the next substrata down. You take all that money.
Marxism is a philosophy of jealousy.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's petty, jealous children that never grew up. And that's definitely what we're seeing.
Yeah, before you know it, there's no one left with anything, because all the little people, so to speak, took all the rich people's stuff, and then they took all the sort of rich people's stuff, and then they took not so rich people's stuff. And then when they saw their neighbor had more stuff than them, they went and took it.
Mm-hmm.
And now nobody has anything. And it was, I think,
except for the oligarchs, right?
Yeah, the oligarchs. Yeah. And so, and then by then it was I think the worst famine in history. Like it was so terrible that it took them decades and decades to dig their way out of it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think anytime you start to see this communist philosophy creep into a civilization and become adopted or accepted by a large percentage of the population, you don't have a whole lot of time left.
Yeah.
And so I think I personally think we're going to see some pretty big shakeups, not just election-wise, but I think we're going to see some pretty big social shakeups over the next couple of years here, and it's going to be a rough time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, because I certainly hope it never gets to the point of like the Great Depression. I remember my grandma telling me a story because my grandma and grandpa, they had a farm in Edinburgh, and for a school project when I was young, I'm like, oh well, tell me how the Depression affected you. She's like, it really didn't. They had a farm.
Mm-hmm.
They were self-sustained.
Yeah.
All that stuff. They went out of their way not to buy stuff, but she would say, oh yeah, I would talk to friends of mine, and there's a story about someone leaving a basket with a little bit of money in it on their doorstep, and someone came and stole the basket and left the money because the money isn't worth shit. Like it wasn't worth anything. The basket was worth more than the money that was in there.
Wow.
And it's like, because the things were worth more than the actual money itself. And what it boils down to is, I don't know, I think any community needs a certain amount of self-sustainability, if that makes any sense.
I agree.
Especially, we're in the breadbasket of the United States. We're in Pennsylvania. There's dairy farms, there's cornfields, there's soy fields, there's everything. All of that should be a local thing where you can buy local milk and all. But you can't buy any local milk. In order to meet all the regulations for the pasteurization process.
I don't want my milk
all
pasteurized.
Of that shit. And it's insane.
Raw milk, man.
Most
all the way.
people have never had raw milk.
All the way.
And I know anyone who's watching is going, raw milk? What is wrong with you?
It's good for your gut.
It's great for you. It's nature's perfect food. Every one of us was raised on nothing but milk for months and months. And it was the biggest growth spurt you've had in the history of your life. I don't know, man.
So I have to ask real quick, who's Fred Swift?
I wore the shirt because it was black, and I figured it would make me look smaller. Because I went to work today, and I had a big, bright yellow shirt on, and it was pouring this morning. And I got soaking wet, so I didn't want to come in here and stink the whole time. This is a golf shirt we had made.
Okay.
Fred Swift is my uncle. He lives out in Edinburgh, and Lyle Cook is his best friend.
Okay.
And
he's the county corner. Yeah.
They've been friends for longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
And so we go to play a golf scramble every year out of one of the local courses, Culbertson. And they buy holes. Like my uncle will buy a hole, and it's and he'll have a sign made that says, "Oh, Lyle Cook, free gold fillings, limited, really like repulsive ball busting stuff."
Right.
And Lyle will buy one saying, "Oh, my uncle was a long haul trucker for his entire life.
Okay.
Like, oh, Fred Swift's trucking gets there most of the time, sometimes, and stuff like that." And it's just it's a long-standing joke. Like Lyle has been the coroner for God knows how long, like 30 years or something.
Yeah.
And so the last time he was running, Fred actually ran against him on the ticket.
Oh, okay.
And all of our friends had buttons made up that said Fred Swift for county coroner, and he actually got a few votes.
Really?
But Lyle's been the coroner forever.
Yeah,
that's a tough job, man.
Oh, dude, I can't even imagine.
He approaches it with dignity and grace, and still has a sense of humor, and he's just a great guy.
Yeah.
And
no, he is funny. I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah.
Seems a really cool guy.
He's a funny guy. If you will never wonder where you stand with Lyle. If he has
He'll let you know.
If he has any thought about anything you've done or said, he will let you know immediately. So,
Well, we covered a lot of topics, and I'm sure we can talk for hours.
No, of course.
Many more things, and I'm sure we will. Probably just not on broadcast. But guys, thanks so much.
Yeah, next time we need like a beverage of some type up here.
Yeah,
yeah,
some whiskey.
Be good.
You know.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
All right.
Which
does affect the availability of lumber, because whiskey barrels are made out of white oak, which is the most popular wood species out there now. So since people like me enjoy my whiskey, I got to trade off and pay more for white oak now, because I like a nice rye, or a nice bourbon.
Well, we already rode some lines today, so I wonder how much further past the line we would go if we had some whiskey.
Oh gosh, it would be it'd be bad. There would be some editing involved.
Well, that and I think there would be a little bit more rambling, and
we rambled a good bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of slurred speech,
bit of rambling.
A touch of slurred speech here and there.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some podcasts where, like, movie reviewers and stuff that will review movies while they're drinking, and they're one of the more entertaining podcasts.
Sure.
Maybe the government critic while we're drinking.
Oh,
or something like that.
Yeah, we can critique the government while we're.
I don't know. I certainly hope that in our rambling somebody gets something out of this, and changes a life perspective, or finds a center where they can let the stress melt away,
or at least to know that. I find it very refreshing when we talk to people, because we talk to people all over the country, and it's always refreshing to me that every now and then when I get on a sales call, because I love doing sales, it's what I'm the best at, and you get on a call and you start talking to somebody, and you just realize that whether you're in California or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or whatever, we all got the same problems, man.
Yep.
It's most of the people that buy our product, they come from very diverse social strata and all that, and no matter who you're backing for any election or whatever, we all have the same problems. It's all, you just want to, make a life for yourself, and you want to feed your kids and hopefully enjoy some nice retirements where you can sit around and play bingo, or go out in the woods and chop wood with a red and black flannel shirt on, and a perfectly sculpted beard. So yeah, I mean, it's always crazy to see that all the stuff that we've just complained about here is not centric to Pennsylvania. It's not centric to any state. It's the whole country.
Yep.
Regardless of how you voted in any election, it's all the same problem. And I can certainly hope that, however, things change going forward in the government or whatever, that we can get behind a candidate that's willing to at least try to fix it.
Yeah.
Not just go, hey, I will. How? I don't know, but I will.
Yeah.
Just give me someone with a plan, someone that wants to make my life and the life of my fellow Americans better. That's all I'm really looking for, man. I want it to be.
I know.
Just
we
better
just
for
want to
everybody.
live out our days in peace and be able to run our businesses, make a little bit extra cash.
You mean not start a bunch of wars? That's insane. You're just insane.
Yeah, I mean, back in my early Marine Corps days, I might have been a little more gung-ho about war than I am today, but yeah, I just want to be left alone.
Yeah. I think that's the majority of people that just want to live a good life, go to the beach every now and then.
Yep.
Enjoy your family and friends, and hopefully in person, and not have to, live vicariously through some social media thing or whatnot. But hopefully, watching a podcast of people just, I think I can summarize this entire podcast by saying we aired a lot of grievances.
We did.
So, but we're all going through it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that maybe could be a new theme for the podcast. We could
airing of grievances.
Airing of grievances section.
Yeah. Well,
what show is that from?
That's Rand Paul, and the airing of grievances started with Seinfeld.
Seinfeld, that's right.
They would do the annual. I think was it Kramer that did the airing of grievances.
Yeah.
And it just took off, and Rand Paul kind of ran with it, and he does it every year now.
Okay.
It's something definitely to look up.
Which I think, I think it's good. And that's the one thing, why I wanted to kind of push some of these topics today, bring up things that are a little bit controversial. And I'm sure some people would not be too happy about things we said about OSHA and whatnot. But these are things that need to be talked about, because everybody's just clammed up about it because they're afraid of repercussions. Mm-hmm. They're afraid they're going to get OSHA visiting again. And I'll tell you what, OSHA, if you're listening, you better not be going to visit Allegheny because of this conversation, you bastards. But no, I mean, that people are afraid. they're afraid of the government and what they can do to them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why they aren't saying anything. We need to talk about this stuff. There needs to be light shed on this darkness so we can fix the problems.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well,
And the only way you can, fix a problem is by identifying the problem first.
Right.
And, you can't just hide your head and all that stuff. And hopefully, like I said, there's some middle ground somewhere where we can start paying less for groceries and, still be able to have a savings account and, get back to how things were just not that long ago.
Yep.
Stuff went to hell in a handcart, and it's only been 3.5 years.
Yeah.
It
was fast.
It was not like this 3.5 years ago.
It was fast.
And I know everyone's 401k has taken the same hit. Everyone's retirement accounts have taken the same hit. Everyone's grocery bill is higher. Everyone's electric bill is higher. Everybody.
Yep.
So I certainly hope that if anything can be taken away, it's hopefully we can get our elected leaders, because we elect them because they represent our interests. Supposedly. And you need to be able to, elect somebody who represents your interest in your community. That's the whole point of our, governmental system is, you have a representative who is supposed to speak for you. Mm-hmm. And if you elect the wrong person that doesn't speak necessarily what you like, then, and you voted for them, then it's on you. So, people just need to get out and, vote with their minds, not necessarily their hearts, because your heart says one thing, but your pocketbook and your mind say something else. There's, sometimes there's, a clear choice, but not very often.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think I've rambled enough.
No, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, love you guys. Enjoyed chatting with you as always.
Always, Nate.
It's good to have us.
We'll be talking again.
Yeah.
We'll be talking
I think
again
we
for
good.
sure.
Like I said, next time a nice amber beverage, and we'll really let this thing get out of hand.
Sounds like a plan.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Nate.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.